Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava, Radha Madhava Radhe. Jaya Radha Madhava, Radha Madhava Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha Baladeva, Jaya Subhadra, Jaya Sudarshana. Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadra, Jaya Sudarshana. Jaya Gauranita, 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 Jaya Gauranita, Jaya Gauranita, Jaya Gauranita, Gauranita, Jaya Gauranita. Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha, Jaya Ananta De, Prahlad Simha, Jaya Ananta De. Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha, Jaya Ananta De, Prahlad Simha, Jaya Ananta De. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol. जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजा काचार्य अष्टोत्र सदस्य श्रीमद अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय. जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजा काचार्य अष्टोत्र सदस्य श्रीमद भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय. नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधरा श्रीवासादि गौरभक्त वृंद की जय. श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरिगोवर्धन की जय. व्रजभूमि श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय. मायापुर श्री नवद्वीप धाम की जय. मथुरा धाम की जय. द्वारका धाम की जय. जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय. गंगा माई की जय. यमुना माई की जय. भक्ति देवी की जय. तुलसी महारानी की जय. समवेत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय. गौरभक्त प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Om Tat Sat. So, Hare Krishna devotees, welcome again for the ISKCON Seshadripuram's morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we will be discussing third canto, 21st chapter, verse number 12. Let me share the screen. I'll chant the verse. Jata harsho apatanmurdna Kshitau labdha manorathaha girbhistvi abhyagranat priti swabhavatma kritanjalaihi jata harsho apathanmurdha kshitau labdha manorathaha girbhistvi abhyagranat priti स्वभावात्मा कृतांजलैः जातहर्षो अपथन्मूर्ध्ना क्षितौ लब्ध मनोरथाः गीर्भिस्त्वी अभ्यघ्नात् प्रीति स्वभावात्मा कृतांजलैः. Word by word meaning. Jataharshaha, naturally jubilant. Apataha, apatat, he fell down. Murdna, with his head. Kshitau, on the ground. Labda, having been achieved. Manaha rataha, his desire. Girbihi, with prayers. Tu, and. Abhyagranat, he satisfied. Pritis swabhava atma, whose heart is by nature always full of love. Krita anjalaihi, with folded hands. Translation. When Kardama Muni actually realized the Supreme Personality of Godhead in person, he was greatly satisfied because his transcendental desire was fulfilled. He fell on the ground with his head bowed to offer obeisances onto the lotus feet of the Lord. His heart naturally full of love of God, with folded hands, he satisfied the Lord with prayers. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So this is a slightly longer purport, so let's just listen in and we will get most of what Prabhupada is saying, and then I will try to explain whatever I can. The realization of the personal form of the Lord is the highest perfectional stage of yoga. In the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where yoga practice is described, this realization of the personal form of the Lord is called the perfection of yoga. After practicing the sitting postures and other regulative principles of the system, one finally reaches the stage of samadhi, absorption in the Supreme. In the samadhi stage, one can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his partial form as Paramatma, or as he is. Samadhi is described in authoritative yoga scriptures, such as the Patanjali Sutras, to be a transcendental pleasure. The yoga system described in the books of Patanjali is authoritative, and the modern so-called yogis who have manufactured their own ways, not consulting the authorities, are simply ludicrous. The Patanjali Yoga system is called Ashtanga Yoga. Sometimes impersonalists pollute the Patanjali Yoga system because they are monists. Patanjali describes that the soul is transcendentally pleased when he meets the supersoul and sees him. If the existence of the supersoul and the individual is admitted, then the impersonalist theory of monoism is nullified. Therefore, some impersonalists and void philosophers twist the Patanjali system in their own way and pollute the whole yoga process. According to Patanjali, when one becomes free from all material desires, he attains his real transcendental situation, and realization of that stage is called spiritual power. In material activities, a person engages in the modes of material nature. The aspiration of such people are to be 1. To be religious, 2. To be economically enriched, 3. To be able to gratify the senses, and at last 4. To become one with the Supreme. According to the monists, when a yogi becomes one with the Supreme, he loses his individual existence, he attains the highest stage called Kaivalya. But actually, the stage of realization of the personality of Godhead is Kaivalya. The oneness of understanding that the Supreme Lord is fully spiritual, and that in full spiritual realization one can understand what he is. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is called Kaivalya, or in the language of Patanjali, realization of spiritual power. His proposal is that when one is freed from material desires and fixed in spiritual realization of the self and the super self, that is called Chit Shakti. In full spiritual realization, there is a perception of spiritual happiness, and that happiness is described in Bhagavad Gita as the supreme happiness, which is beyond the material senses. Trance is described to be of two kinds, sampragnata and asampragnata, or mental speculation and self-realization. In samadhi or asampragnata, one can realize by his spiritual senses the spiritual form of the Lord. That is the ultimate goal of spiritual realization. According to Patanjali, when one is fixed in constant realization of the supreme form of the Lord, one has attained the perfectional stage as attained by Kardama Muni. Unless one attains this stage of perfection, beyond the perfection of the preliminaries of the yoga system, there is no ultimate realization. There are 8 perfections in the Ashtanga yoga system. One who has attained them can become lighter than the lightest and greater than the greatest, and he can achieve whatever he likes. But even achieving such material success in yoga is not the perfection or the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is described here. Kardama Muni saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his eternal form. Devotional service begins with the relationship of the individual soul and the super soul, or Krishna and Krishna's devotees. And when one attains it, there is no question of falling down. If through the yoga system, one wants to attain the stage of seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face, but is attracted instead to attainment of some material power, then he is detoured from proceeding further. Material enjoyment, as encouraged by bogus yogis, has nothing to do with the transcendental realization of spiritual happiness. Real devotee of Bhakti Yoga accept only the material necessities of life absolutely needed to maintain the body and soul together. They refrain completely from all exaggerated material sense gratification. They are prepared to undergo all kinds of tribulations provided they can make progress in the realization of the personality of Godhead. Om Ajnana-Timirandasya Jnananjana-Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadanti Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagra Jatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrinda Vaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin iti namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Sri Vasadi Gaurabhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this is a very wonderful verse. So these discussions are happening between the great Mahatma Vidura and Maitreya Muni, and in the process Vidura is keep questioning Maitreya Muni on different aspects of devotional life and in different activities of the Lord and his wonderful devotees. So in the process he is questioning about Swayambhuva Manu. And while describing Swayambhuva Manu, this description of Kardama Muni, whose son-in-law is actually coming up. So we will, here Kardama Muni is actually having darshan of the Lord. So that is the verse that is being described here. When Kardama Muni actually realized the Supreme Personality of Godhead in person, he was greatly satisfied because his transcendental desire was fulfilled. He fell on the ground with his head bowed to offer obeisances onto the lotus feet of the Lord. His heart, naturally full of love of God, with folded hands, he satisfied the Lord with prayers. So here Kardama Muni was actually performing wonderful penances, and as a result of that penance, that means he was performing these were highly what do you call elevated personalities in the system of yoga, and he performed this yoga system, and then in the process he actually got to see the personality of Godhead. In that context, this is being explained, and Prabhupada is discussing about Patanjali Yoga, which is a very authorized form of yoga system. Today, we may see many times, like in Prabhupada's purport or while devotees are speaking, they actually call out the false yoga system that is there. So you would have had many times devotees speaking that there's a lot of bogus yoga system is there. But we also say at the same time that yoga system is not bogus, but the people who are propagating it in today's context are actually giving wrong versions or giving the wrong teachings of the yoga system. But here what the authorized yoga system has been discussed here by Prabhupada, and this Patanjali system of yoga is supposed to be one of the most authorized form of yoga system, and it is also called as the Ashtanga Yoga. Now, the principles of Patanjali is being described also here. So, if you see, the principles of Patanjali is actually aligned to the Vedic understanding, which means it is dualism, not monoism. Dualism means there is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and there is the Jiva. It is not like these two are one. So, the Jiva remains as Jiva and the Lord remains as Lord. And then there is this Prakriti, which is the universe in which the Jiva is actually trying to lord over nature, thinking he is God. So this is the platform, and when the Jiva is here in this Prakriti, in association with Prakriti, he actually gets into a kind of a trap. So what are those traps have been described specifically? I'm trying to elaborate on this verse. So there are a few things like avidya, which is called nascence. That means the ignorance, or we call it in different ways. It is basically avidya or nascence or ignorance. Asmita, which means false ego. Then raga, that means clinging on to the bodily enjoyments. That's called raga. Clinging on to the bodily enjoyments. Dvesha, that means hatred for various things, hatred for living beings, hatred for our human beings, hatred for life itself. There are so many hatred which are there. And abnivesha, that means fear of death or absorption in material matter. So when a jiva is actually caught up in these five aspects of existence, then he gets more and more bewildered. But the process of this Patanjali system is very clear. The idea of Patanjali system is to enable a person to come to the stage of meeting up with the super soul who is situated within the heart of the devotee, and he looks at that super soul with great reverence, respect and love, which is the culmination of the Patanjali system. So that basically the culmination of Patanjali system is to see that Supreme Personality of Godhead in the super soul form, and then develop a lot of love, affection and reverence. In fact, here Kardama Muni is actually coming to that point. That means he's coming to the perfection of his penance, of his following of the yoga, and he's actually having darshan of the Lord as it is. So this is the context. So following this Patanjali system, he is actually able to achieve this. Now, a Patanjali system actually says the soul, the jiva, can actually extricate himself from the chitta. When you say chitta, that means when we discuss, I think in 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, we talk about three things, right? That means of the buddhi, mind, intelligence, and false ego. So these three are put together as chitta, but basically chitta is uh, a contaminated state of these three aspects of it. That means mana, buddhi, and ahankara, and that Patanjali is actually calling as chitta. So these three are also called as antakarana. That means in Patanjali system, these three also are called as antakarana. When these three, this antakarana is in a impure state, that means it's conscious, it is in a polluted consciousness, it is called chitta. So now the same thing that we have also learnt in the Bhakti Yoga process, but how do you see the method given is slightly different. Like, we will see the eightfold Ashtanga Yoga is what is described as Patanjali Yoga. So let's try to understand what is this eightfold steps. But before going into this one, as I said, the idea is to actually see the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the Paramatma in the heart of the Jiva. That is the objective of Patanjali Yoga, and this has been, I believe, explained in various books of authoritative books of Patanjali Yoga. Today there are so many books coming out, but many of these Patanjali Yogas being described actually talks about this. And I heard one devotee actually also speak about, if you all know, the yoga, one of the yoga experts in modern world was one Mr. Iyengar. Like, I think he lived many years, and he was considered the biggest authority in the practice of yoga in India. And this gentleman actually had written very clearly that this objective of the jiva having darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the super soul is the ultimate objective of Patanjali Yoga, and one should actually strive for that in normal part of life, whether yoga, no yoga, or whatever it is. And the Patanjali Yoga comes into play when a particular jiva is not in a position to do it otherwise. So that's how he also puts it up. Now he says, he also says, prapatya to God. That means the ultimate surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he is very clear, so if you are really, many people talk about this yoga, but you should also hear from the proper exponent of yoga, which is Iyengar in this case in India. He passed away some years, maybe within a year or 2 years back. Within that time frame, he actually left the body. And he was highly, glorified in India for the practice of yoga. So he is actually advocating that this is the ultimate goal and one should try to achieve it, and that means love of Godhead is the ultimate one, and where one is not able to achieve it by other means, then you may want to try this Patanjali system. Now we all know also this Patanjali system also is trying to do it through a set of physical exercises, kind of a method of achieving this. See, when you say physical, this is the gross, right? The gross body. So many people are highly caught up in the lusty propensities that the body is not in a position to be controlled. See, the idea of the whole system is that the mind should control the senses, right? The mind is sitting above this, the five senses that we have. And the mind is supposed to control all the senses. We see this picture of, in Bhagavad Gita, the picture of this Rath that we see here with these 5 horses. And in certain chapters, it is described also how, this entire body is like the Rath, and how the senses are the horses, and then, the Lagan, which is the mind, and all of that. So, the mind is supposed to control the senses, but sometimes the mind is also not controlled. The mind is actually running wildly while the horses are running, wanting to run, and the mind is actually pushing the horses to run in a very wrong manner than where actually the driver wants it to drive. So this is going on, and when someone is too very much grossly not able to perform, then to control it, then these kind of systems are created. Now let us try to see what is the different types of this Ashtanga Yoga. One is this Yama, then Niyama, then Asana, then Pranayama, then Pratyahara, then Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi. So these are the 8 steps. But if you really see this Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, these are basically some things which are basically trying to control the gross aspects of the bodily aspects. The Yama is basically about the rules and regulations, right? The Yama talks about the various rules and regulations, just like how we also have in Bhakti Yoga. See, if you really look at it in Yama, one of the aspects is that, one needs to follow non-violence. This is one of the Yama principles of Patanjali Yoga. That means one who is following yoga has to follow this system of non-violence. Why? To attain the last stage of Samadhi. Now, in that, if you are following any kind of violent practices, then you cannot attain the Samadhi. So, anybody who is following yoga, then he should actually be non-violent, in the sense he should not be eating meat. So, this very basics. But if you see everybody is eating meat and they say, I want to go and do yoga. No? So there's very big contradictions in today's polluted way of how the yoga is being taught. And therefore, the polluted methods are being criticized. But the yoga process is actually meant to attain the stage of Samadhi, which is basically seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the heart as the Paramatma. Now, so the Yama is like this. Then non-violence is described. Then truthfulness is one of the other aspect of it. That means, naturally, if you see in Bhakti Yoga, we follow these things as the 4 regulative principles, right? We are saying no meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling. Now, that is all covered in the Yama aspect of it. And Niyama is actually following certain regulations of devotion, of spirituality. That means cleanliness. You need to be like this, which we are also following. If you see, we have to, get up early in the morning. We need to take a nice bath, and then, we should wear nice clean clothes. And then there are so many practices. We have our Mangalarti, then we have our Guru Puja, then, we have, some Brahminical initiated devotees, they do the what do you call, the Sandhya Vandana. And like this, there are many aspects which are there, which we are following. So these are Niyama. And then the Asana. The Asana is basically the sitting postures which actually help to regulate the body. You sort of fix the body. Even when we say, when you are chanting, you need to sit in a proper posture, like you sit in front of the Lord. Then all your senses, as far as possible, try to engage in the Lord, right? For example, you have some nice incenses offered to the Lord, and that one you are actually inhaling. Therefore, you are connected to the Lord through his the incenses which is offered to the Lord. Your eyes seeing the beautiful form of the Lord. You are either standing or sitting in front of the Murti of the Lord, or the picture of the Lord, or that way. And then your ears, you are chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. The ear is engaged in hearing the holy name of the Lord. Then the hand is actually touching the bead, which is basically the Tulsi Mala, which is very powerful to give spiritual potency. Like this, we are actually engaging all the senses, and we are sitting in a very proper physical form, which helps us to actually practice the devotional life. So like this is all there. Only thing is slightly different in the Patanjali Yoga, but the objective is all the same. Then this asana, then this pranayama. This pranayama is about controlling the air within us. See, the point is, through these various airs, we are able to, which is basically circulating inside our body through the what do you call, through the various our network of systems within our body, which is able to keep us active, through which we are able to perceive the external world, right? With these airs which are there, which is regulated within our body, we are able to experience this wonderful world outside, the Prakriti. In this Patanjali process of pranayama, the expectation is to reverse that. That means use all of these airs to focus inside us to see that Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are using that same air, this entire body, to actually experience the outside the world in normally without having to do any yoga. This yoga process is actually to internalize the working of the body, to be able to inwardly see and then see that Paramatma. So that's the point which is there, which is called as pranayama. And the pratyahara is actually the pranayama is the process, and the pratyahara is actually able to come to that point of physically being able to internalize ourselves. So that's, these two are correlated, but one is the process, the other is the which actually comes to the point of actually experiencing that state. In one sense, we are able to internalize ourselves. Maybe we have not yet had darshan of the Lord, but we are able to internalize ourselves. That is in pratyahara. And then in dharana, the point is all about contemplating on that point of who we are. Like, contemplating on the point of that Supreme Personality of Godhead, who we are, all of that. So contemplation means it is quite deep. It is not at a very bodily platform. So these things, this dharana, dhyana and samadhi, are relating to the subtle aspects. That means the man, buddhi and ahankara. While the first five, the first four and then the five, five is a kind of a transition kind of a thing. That means the first, the yama, niyama, then asana, pranayama. These are towards the gross, towards the body. How we can actually control them. These first five, and then the last three towards the subtle portion of our body. That means the mind, the intelligence and false ego. So even if you see, even in Bhakti, not Bhakti Yoga, you can see, if you go to some holy places, you see people actually performing Dandavat Parikrama, right? You will see people falling, taking obeisances, and then getting up at the point where the head is, and then making one more dandavat, and then you get them. That means they are literally, or some people in some many local places we can see they do something called they roll over the prakara of the Lord, like they keep rolling, they circumambulate the Lord by just rolling around, using the entire body and rolling around. Now, sometimes we may think why all these things are. These are also in a way to control the senses, right? That means who's finding it very difficult to control the senses, they are applying these techniques to actually try and control the senses. But in our parampara, particularly Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati does not encourage such practices, because the idea is it is very difficult to control through this process. The idea of controlling is quite easy if you are able to subjugate yourself to the spiritual master, to actually subjugate ourselves to the spiritual master, to bow down and then try to take his word as our authority and somehow try to follow those principles, then actually all these things will automatically go away. One need not follow many very difficult processes of these trying to physically control without the help of authority. So that is there. If you have an authority and the authority says, and the authority knows, he understands your nature, he understands your environment, and then he actually gives you a kind of set of activities if you can actually do on a regular basis, and that will automatically elevate us to this platform of the help, or in other words, help us get over the problems of the physical body. That means the senses, the mind, all these and things can easily be controlled by following the instructions of the spiritual master and the instructions of the acharya. That is possible. Um, Now, this dharana is all about, what is time? 8:45. So, this dharana is all about trying to contemplate uh, on the soul, right? Contemplate on the soul and contemplate on what is the objective that we need to achieve, which is actually have a darshan of the super soul inside. Now, generally, when you start contemplating, right? For example, when you are to example. Uh, like test a particular matter, then you take a portion of the matter, you take a few cells within that matter and then test it. That is equivalent to the actual whole matter. Like if you want to test for example the sea water, or if you want to test what is there in a mountain, you take a small piece of that and then try to analyze it, and then that this piece is actually in relation to that big one which is there. So, like that, once you contemplate on the soul, you are able to understand that the soul is actually such a pure aspect, and then we are actually much more contaminated than the real situation. And the source of the soul being the super soul, that automatically gets revealed. Um, Naturally, once we understand, in a contaminated state, when you are able to understand the pure state of something, then naturally the aspiration to get that pure thing is there, right? Even while eating things, today we are talking about, okay, you take these grains and eat. We have been eating that, and then today later people said, these grains are all got so much of contamination in terms of fertilizers, this, that, and all that stuff. So why don't you eat organic, right? Organic is a pure state of this one. So everybody is gravitating towards organic, right? Because the mind is actually telling, oh, I am right now taking something which is not pure. Therefore, let me gravitate towards something which is pure. So the same way, when the soul is actually able to understand that, that this is the contaminated state and this is the pure state, it is natural for the for the soul to gravitate towards that pure state, that jiva to gravitate towards that pure state, and therefore he gets deeper and deeper into the understanding of the pure state of consciousness, and therefore the source of that pure state of consciousness. So this is all happening as part of the dharana process of contemplating inside us. And how do you do this? Through the word of dhyana. Dhyana is basically meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When you meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you are actually coming to the state of uh, actually uh, making our intent known to the Supreme Lord, that I am actually all the time thinking of you, and then Lord will in the process reciprocate, and then the Lord reciprocates through the point of giving darshan, and that point, that means the super soul gives darshan to the person, and that is the point of samadhi. That means he comes to a state of actually attaining the perfection of Patanjali Yoga. I put it in a very simple manner, but if you really if some Patanjali expert is saying, hey, you make it so simple, it is not so simple. Yeah, but yes, but the concept is this. But how do you do that then? If you go into deeper into each of these aspects, then it's going to go, you will have to spend lifetimes to achieve whatever, even one state or two state, even to perfect the what do you call the asanas is very difficult, like with our body, some asanas make you stand upside down, and so many things are there. You have to twist your body. Today in whatever state of our conditioning, we can't even bend down fully, right? Where is the question of twisting our body and all that? So there's a lot of effort required to come to that state. Then to get to that, to do this twisting, then you need to do so many other things so that you are able to bend down. So all these things are happening. It's very difficult to follow in today's context, but the very simple method given is how we can easily attain this through the process of devotional service, because all of these things have actually been addressed, but in a very practical way, suited, tailor-made for the Kali Yuga practitioners, Bhakti Yoga system. So now let's go down to see these senses are very difficult to control, and if you are able to control the tongue, right, if you actually that means if you are able to control the tongue, which means if you are particularly when you speak talk of tongue, the first main thing comes about what you taste and what you eat, because of the tongue we keep eating so many things, and then we become so much bloated, or we get so many diseases from all that. Or the tongue can also be used in terms of how it is wrongly used for being very sharp, being very negative by criticizing, or being very hurting people. Sometimes they say, right, even if you physically hit me, that's okay, but then you have used your tongue to hurt me, and that is hurting me so badly. People say like that. So this tongue has got so many of these things. So if you can control this tongue in in different ways, particularly in terms of the like today being Ekadasi, like if we can really fast, then the tongue is controlled. When the tongue is controlled, everything else is controlled. Now, for example, when you are really fasting hard, when your senses are very lusty, if you are fasting, then where is the energy for the senses to be lusty, right? It automatically gets subdued, and the tongue becomes very strong at that point. And if you are able to use the strong tongue in a proper way, then actually you can elevate ourselves. So if you go down in that process, it is mentioned, like in Bhakti Yoga, like there was this thing which is said that if one can take the dust of the lotus feet, that means to the tongue, the dust of the lotus feet, or lust of take the dust from the dust of Vrindavana, where all the Goswamis roamed around in the various forests. If you can take that, then you can immediately control everything. But then where can we get that kind of dust? Do I straight physically take the dust and eat it? Is that how we understand it? Like that sometimes we do, like when you get a little bit of dust of Vrindavana, when of any very pure devotee, if he has walked, and then we take the dust, we put it on our head. Sometimes some of the devotees also taste those dust. But the really how we do it is actually taking the instructions of the these amazing pure devotees, the Goswamis, and then Srila Prabhupada and his pure followers. So that is something which we need to do. And when what is time now? Okay, another 7 minutes is there. So in like this, what happens is, see, when you start contemplating in the dharana aspect, and then you, in our context, if you are able to take to the instructions of the spiritual master, then the Lord reveals himself. Like, see, the point is like this. The spiritual master, sometimes when you see these, like when the motor, right? When what do you call the motor which pulls water from the ground, right? When you switch on, sometimes the water doesn't pump in. Then generally people try to put in some water, right, through that there will be one entry point where we can pour. We have a bucket of water and keep pouring in that thing, and after some time suddenly you find the water gushing out. So maybe there is some kind of a vacuum created. Therefore we pour this water, and once we pour this water, it goes and removes the vacuum, and then there is a connection established with that water out there, and then it suddenly sucks in that water in that pump, and then it really comes up. Like this, we have completely lost our memory of our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the vacuum that has been created. And once we actually help by pouring water, like how we take the instructions of the spiritual master, and the spiritual master reveals some aspects of our devotion, of our spirituality, and they are able to explain to us that you are not the body, you are the soul, and they give us information about the various scriptures, and then they give us some idea about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they are able to expose us to that sphere which we have never had even an element of iota of understanding because of our forgetfulness. And once that happens, and we take it up seriously, in Bhagavad Gita it is also said, then the Lord actually reveals himself from inside. So up to a point we can actually learn through various scriptures and stuff like that. But beyond a point, the Lord reveals himself. Like, for example, if you see the Goswamis, many of them, all of them, they had a direct channel with the Lord. They were able to explain and express so many things which are not uh, kind of like if you go into Damodar Leela is explained in the Bhagavatam up to up to a point in time. In fact, incidentally, those who are following from Ekadasi to Ekadasi, today is the first day for Kartik month. So if you see now, if you read the explanations given by the Acharyas, there are so many things which are not specifically there in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which we are not able to realize that. But they are having a direct channel with the Supreme Lord, and they can actually visualize all the pastimes which are happening there. And they can actually come and give so much of minute, intricate details, which is amazing, right? So that is very important, that once you follow these processes, and particularly in our system, if you follow even in our system, when you follow the regulations given, and then you take up what you call the formal initiation from a spiritual master, then our channel with the Lord keeps opening up, and then the Lord finally gives us this darshan, and then we are actually allowed entry into that place. See, what happens in this yoga system is the culmination, as I said, is having darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and there it ends. But actually, does it end there? So you need to be, if you really contemplate, that's the beauty of Bhakti Yoga, where it is, in a way, it is actually a starting point, if you really ask me, because the real game starts after that. Once you have darshan of the Lord, here in the Patanjali Yoga system, you are satisfied. But in this system, you say, one is in a Bhakti Yoga system, then you say, okay, Lord, now I have had darshan with you. Now, but I am so much attracted to you. I have so much of love and thing with you. I want to have a lot of relationship with you. And therefore, depending on your mood of that relationship, the Lord then actually goes one step other than just simply giving you darshan. He actually goes and reciprocates your mood of love for Him in whatever way you have. Right? So for example, we may look at, have a relationship with the Lord in friendship, just like how Krishna reciprocated to Arjuna in friendship. There is a wonderful interaction between these two friends, which are mind-boggling, which we cannot simply even imagine, contemplate, speculate. Nothing is possible. That is something which is absolutely out of this world. Or if you have a relationship with the Lord as the child, then how Devaki and how Yashoda, they had this relationship, is something which is mind-boggling. We cannot, it can be read, it is nice, some little bit of a smile we can have. But there's nothing that we can go deeper in. That has to be realized. That's something which is fantastic, which is beyond anything that we can experience, even in the spiritual world. And just simply seeing the Lord is one thing, but going into a relationship with the Lord is completely a different ballgame. Through this process, right? We need to follow the process. I will take another couple of minutes. So the process of following the acharyas, like the Goswamis, as I said, taking the dust off their lotus feet, is simply following their instructions. And when we are following their instructions, we are actually coming to the point of chanting the holy name of the Lord. And when we are chanting the holy name of the Lord, then there are different aspects also. The first circle that we encounter as we start chanting is the Anartha Circle. That means the point where we are actually having so many negatives in our mind. That means when we are chanting, we are not able to focus on our chanting. We are thinking of so many things, right? So many bad qualities actually surface when you agitate, right? When you agitate, all the dust, clean water is there. But when you go and put a spoon or something and try to take water, then everything from underneath comes out, right? So it becomes muddied. So like this, so many anarthas come out, but we don't stop there. So when we start chanting, so many negativities come from our mind. It's when you broom also, when you broom the house which is full of dust, all the dust rise up, right? then it rise up. When you are trying to clean, all the dust rise up. Like this, when we are trying to clean our heart with this chanting, then the lot of anarthas, which is the bad elements, come out actually. So one should not stop with that, but we should just continue to go forward. And when you are going forward, slowly we will come to the point of positive distraction. That means you will be distracted from your chanting, but those distraction will be more positive. Like, you will have, oh, I have to do this service, I have to do this service, like this we are going on. Like, so there are so many, you will say, no, Prabhu, I'm not able to chant only, I have got this service, that I have to do this, I have to do, I'm not able to read properly, like this. These are also disturbances in one way. Some people, some devotees, like, when you are overburdened, I feel, Prabhu, this is too much, Prabhu. Like, I am all the time getting into some services. I am asked to do some services. And then what is the point of, I need to actually sit and chant, and, I need to lead, I need to read, I need to contemplate like this, I don't get the time only. Okay, so that is in a kind of a way distraction, but it is very positive distraction. It is going to help you go forward in your contemplation. It is going to help you go deeper into our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. From that, we move to the point of spiritual admiration. That means we come to a point where our mind becomes even more softer. It becomes, mind and heart become softer, and we are able to appreciate finer aspects of devotional service. Like, for example, if you are hearing a nice class of a nice pastime of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we are able to actually feel so nice about that pastime. We are able to appreciate it. We are able to, wow, some of us laugh, some of us smile, some of us take it a little deeply into our heart. Sometimes some devotees even show, some signs of emotion when some pastimes are happening like that. So this is actually a sign of, that doesn't mean it's artificially to be, to be imagined or like that. But what comes naturally, right? That is something which is actually this appreciation of that you are slightly moving into this appreciation circle, that you are able to, like, for example, you are able to see some nice qualities in a devotee, you are able to appreciate, you can feel inspiration from them and all. So you move into that one. And then further, when you go in, you are able to have more more and more realization. These are some of the initial things that happens in our thing, which I thought I will also call out. And one of the most important thing is to avoid the offenses while chanting. So these offenses is in a way, like, for example, one is sinful life, one is offenses. So sinful is something which is in the external world, right? Wherever we go, we can commit some sinful activities. But these offenses are something which is always more considered at the lotus feet of the devotees. So one needs to be very careful not to commit these offenses. But these offenses are always there wherever, if you have to look at a situation like where there's a water hole, and then a deer comes to take water there. And if the tiger is also always there in that same place, because he knows the deer is going to come out here. So like this, you can equate this deer to be the devotee, and the water hole is naturally the places of where devotional activities are. Like, there's a lot of association of devotees are there. So a devotee naturally has to come out there, where there are a lot of devotees. He wants to take association of devotees so that it's nice for him to progress. But there, this offense is also sitting, because when you meet the devotee only, you will be, there's an opportunity to offend, right? So it's these two things are there always. Wherever there are devotees, if you offend a devotee, if you do something negatively against a devotee, that's an offense. So where devotee is there, the opportunity to offend is also there. So it's always like this. So one needs to be very careful how to be very in a mood of not trying to be offensive to any devotee. So that's something which we need to be very careful. We need to if it's more possible, if we can be in that spiritual administration, spiritual appreciation, that kind of a mood, if you are there, then these offenses will automatically go away. So you need to know in which sphere I need to be there, and we can easily get over this. But now think of it. We talked about this dualist, that means the one who is able to see the Lord and he is able to see the Jiva separate. And then we talked about a devotee who goes even one more further of not just understanding being separate, but even creating a relationship between these two. And then there is this monoist, right? This Mayavadis who think that, everything is ultimately one and there is just one light and there is nothing beyond it. These Mayavadis has no idea of anything to do with this wonderful, what I talked about, this relationship with the Lord, that wonderful pastimes with the Lord, that ecstasy of having a relationship with the Lord. They have no concept of it, because for them it is simply losing your existence and, sort of mixing up with some light. So just imagine the power of all this, mm, the devotional life or the bhakti yoga, and how we are so much blessed to have such deep knowledge or exposure into this area of actual ultimate self-realization. So we are always grateful to our parampara, and particularly to Srila Prabhupada, who brought it out to us, that he's made it so easily available for us that we can even forget about experiencing them, even to try to theoretically understanding, or even not even understanding, theoretically reading such aspects itself is mind-boggling. To be able to have that experience, Prabhupada has given us so wonderfully, that we can read all the books, try to understand, or try to even read it. It makes so much of bliss and so much of sukriti that we get. And then what if we actually try to practice and try to go further and further deeper into it? It's completely a big gain for us that we could not have achieved in millions of our past life. We are just getting it in this one life. So with this I conclude. If there are any comments and any questions, welcome. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, as you were saying in the class, we have to contemplate to how exactly when we chant, what exactly we have to think of, Prabhuji. What exactly is that? Because normally we see the deities, and sometimes we are in the class, we have to hear the sound, we sometimes get confusions, disconnects.
See, the ultimate objective of your chanting, Prabhu, of all our chanting, is to get into the Leela of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In one sense, when someone is in pure state of chanting, the Leelas of the Lord actually manifest into our heart. Like I mentioned about the Goswamis, right? They are able to actually see the Leela. It is not like reading from the books from Srimad Bhagavatam or whatever. They can physically see the Leela happening. So that is the ultimate state of perfect chanting. That means even as we are chanting, the Leelas manifest inside our head. This is the ultimate perfection of chanting nicely. That means perfectional stage of chanting. But can we, come to that point? So many people have these questions. What should I do at that time? Should I actually think about these Leelas of the Lord? That's something which we should not artificially try to do. When you are reaching that stage, you are actually able to see it without you having to think like, today I will visualize Damodar Leela, and then you can't chant like that. But actually when you are in that pure state of chanting, Damodar Leela or whatever Leela will automatically appear in your head. It is not like, it's like drama there, today I will go and watch this movie. No, it's not like that. The Lord actually manifests various pastimes into that pure devotee's heart when he is able to chant in that pure state of consciousness. Therefore, we should not be thinking about, what should I do, what should I not do, and all that. Like as you said, at our beginning stage, our idea is to keep our environment in such a way that, we are all our senses are connected to the Lord's. That's the basic stage. That means I am able to see the Lord, I am able to smell the Lord. It means like, for example, an incense offered to the Lord is not different from Him, that we are able to experience the Lord through this, if I can call it as Pranayama. That means we inhale the incenses or the scent that is offered to the Lord, the chandan which is offered to the Lord, whatever. So like this, if you are able to experience the Lord through your eyes, then through your nose, through your ear by hearing the chanting, and then through the hands, and then like this, if you are able to do, that is actually the most. Prabhupada every time keeps saying, don't complicate the whole thing. Simply chant and hear. That's all. That means you chant the holy name of the Lord and you hear the sound vibration. The methodology is that sound vibration enters through the ears and gets into the heart. This is the process. But if you want to complicate it, we can keep on complicating in whatever. If you are able to do this, in the process, anarthas will come. I talked about it, right? That will surface. We may think of so many things. Oh, my office, my this and that, and so many things keep coming into our head. Some nonsense also come into our head. Something which we have seen, we go a little deeper into that, and then our all vakra mentality comes. So that is all in the beginning stages. That you just go on chanting, and after that you come to this point of I said positive distraction, where you feel very positive about everything in devotional life. Sometimes anxiety for devotional life, all these things come. So that's all fine. But to begin with, our idea is to just simply sit and chant and hear. And once we are doing this, see, bhakti or perfection in chanting is not achieved. You can underline this word. We never achieve perfection in chanting. It is awarded to you. Perfection in chanting is awarded. That means how much sincerely I am simply trying to chant and hear, the Lord will therefore award it to you. When He awards, then these levels automatically reveal to our heart and we can have darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the Lord actually, and then He gives information about Himself sitting as Paramatma in our heart. He will tell us everything. That is why we are chanting so hard. The idea of chanting is simply to get the Lord to reveal about Himself more and more and more and more and more. So that is the objective. So chant and hear. And because we are so polluted, try to have an environment which gives us reminding about the Lord, so that we don't go away from whatever basic, at least seeing nice picture, smelling. Again, I'm coming to the same points. And then you can chant on the holy name of the Lord. Then the positive things may come. Sometimes it is also good, like when you are chanting, then you may suddenly hear about some class which you heard. It is very nice. It was. So if you are meditating on that when you are chanting, that is also good actually. Because it keeps you within the Lord, not outside of the Lord. So that's very important. So some of these things happen. Some nice devotees thought come about in your mind at that point in time. That is good. It is a positive. So these are all showing signs that I am actually progressing further. You may not be focusing there on the Lord, or when you are chanting, contemplating on the Lord, but you are thinking about a devotee or some particular aspect of their devotional life, some class which happened, or about some nice kirtan which happened. These things actually help to positively impact, even though they are distraction, they positively impact our progress in chanting. Does this help, Prabhu?
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji. It's very clear. Thank you. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Donat Pranam, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Hare
Krishna. So it's 9:13.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. It was wonderful class. Very nice, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Okay, so we will end this session. I'm sorry we have gone a little over time, but the topic was so interesting that there's so much I thought we can cover. Hare Krishna. Thank you all very much. We will end the session now. Hare Krishna.